Across the icy peaks of the Himalayas, where storms roar like ancient gods, a prophecy whispers of a war unlike any the world has ever seen. In Tibetan texts, it is called the Great Shambhala War, a clash not of mere armies but of principles: light against darkness, wisdom against ignorance, truth against deception. For centuries, monks and mystics have debated when this war will come, and who will lead it. The prophecy says clearly, when the shadow of greed and corruption blankets the world, the king of Shambhala will rise, and his warriors will descend from their hidden kingdom to wage the final battle. The ancient scriptures paint a picture both terrifying and awe-inspiring. They describe the armies of darkness as vast, countless, and equipped with weapons that devour entire cities. These warriors are not demons in a literal sense but men who have surrendered completely to greed, their hearts hardened by materialism, their vision clouded by illusion. They march under banners of power and conquest, driven by the belief that the world is theirs to own, to exploit, to consume until nothing remains. Their weapons are machines of fire and thunder, capable of destroying mountains and poisoning skies, a vision chillingly familiar to anyone living in the nuclear age. Against this force rises the army of Shambhala, led by the Kalki King. Unlike their enemies, these warriors do not march for wealth or dominion. They march for balance, for truth, for the preservation of life itself. Tibetan texts describe them as shining beings, clothed in armor of light, their weapons forged not of metal but of consciousness, tools that amplify intention and transform reality itself. Some scholars interpret this symbolically, suggesting the army represents an awakening of humanity's higher potential. But others, especially among Tibetan mystics, believe this is literal, that somewhere, hidden beyond snow and stone, an actual force waits, unseen yet vigilant, until the appointed hour. The battle itself is prophesied to be catastrophic. The texts speak of skies ablaze with fire, of mountains splitting as if the earth itself rebels, of rivers turning red under the weight of destruction. For 40 years, the war will rage, spreading across continents, consuming nations. And yet, in the end, it is not the sheer force of arms that decides victory, but resonance, the ability of the Shambhala warriors to align themselves with the universal frequency, to wield vibration as both shield and sword. They fight not only on the battlefield of earth but also in the unseen dimensions of mind and spirit. One haunting verse describes the Kalki King standing at the center of the battlefield, holding a wheel of fire that spins with infinite spokes. This is the wheel of time, the Kalachakra itself, which he uses to dismantle the illusions of his enemies. Those who stand against him, no matter their weapons, crumble as their illusions are shattered. It is not so much that they are destroyed as that they are revealed, shown to be hollow, powerless, nothing more than shadows collapsing under the weight of truth. And yet the texts are clear: the war will not be easy. Even the warriors of Shambhala will suffer, for the forces of darkness are cunning and relentless. Entire kingdoms will fall, and humanity will stand on the brink of annihilation. But it is precisely at that edge, when despair seems absolute, that the prophecy says the tide will turn. The Kalki King, harnessing the full resonance of Shambhala, will unleash a wave of transformation that sweeps across the world. Not a weapon of destruction, but of revelation, a vibration that awakens every soul to its true nature, breaking the chains of ignorance. At that moment, the final victory is won, not through conquest but through awakening. What makes this prophecy even more unsettling is how it resonates with myths across cultures. In Hindu tradition, the Kalki avatar, the final incarnation of Vishnu, is foretold to appear at the end of the current age, riding a white horse, wielding a flaming sword, to destroy evil and restore Dharma. In Christianity, the Book of Revelation speaks of a final battle at Armageddon, where forces of light defeat the armies of darkness. In Norse mythology, Ragnarok describes the gods marching to war against giants, with the world consumed in fire and reborn anew. How is it that cultures separated by oceans and centuries share the same vision? A great war at the end of time, a final confrontation before renewal. Could Shambhala's prophecy be the Tibetan echo of a universal truth, a cycle written into the very rhythm of existence? Modern interpreters suggest another possibility, that the battle of Shambhala is not external at all, but internal. The armies of darkness are not foreign invaders but the forces of greed, hatred, and ignorance within each human heart. The warriors of Shambhala are the qualities of compassion, wisdom, and clarity that must rise to meet them. In this interpretation, the final battle is not fought on battlefields with swords and bombs, but in the choices we make, the illusions we cling to, and the truths we dare to face. If so, then the war is already happening, inside each of us. But still, there remain the mysteries that cannot be dismissed. Travelers in the Himalayas continue to tell stories of hidden valleys where no maps lead, of encounters with radiant beings who speak of a coming war. Intelligence reports from the Cold War era describe Soviet and Nazi expeditions seeking the entrance to Shambhala, convinced it was real. Whistleblowers from secret government projects hint at strange anomalies in Tibet and Mongolia, electromagnetic distortions that defy explanation. Could it be that Shambhala exists both as a spiritual metaphor and as a physical reality, a hidden kingdom whose warriors will one day emerge when humanity needs them most? If the prophecy is literal, then we may be closer than ever to the final war. The conditions it describes are here: a world fractured by greed, armed with weapons of annihilation, blinded by illusions, trembling under the weight of its own excesses. All that remains is the appearance of the Kalki King and his shining army. And if the whispers from hidden monasteries are true, if the visions of travelers and mystics are to be believed, then perhaps the warriors of Shambhala are already preparing, unseen, waiting for the signal that the time has come. And yet, perhaps the greatest twist of the prophecy is this: Shambhala does not reveal itself to those who wait passively. It reveals itself only to those who are ready. The final battle may not be a war that happens to us, but one we must choose to fight. To align with the army of Shambhala is not to wait for saviors in shining armor, but to awaken the Shambhala within ourselves. For the prophecy says, when the world is ready, Shambhala will appear. The question that remains is not when the final battle will come, but whether we will recognize it when it does, and whether we will be ready to fight it, not with fear and hatred, but with the weapons of wisdom, compassion, and truth. For if Shambhala's prophecy is true, then the fate of the world does not rest only in the hands of hidden kings or radiant warriors. It rests in ours. The war is already upon us, and every choice we make determines which side we stand on. Light or darkness, truth or illusion, Shambhala or the abyss. The battlefield is the world itself, and the final war, the war that decides the fate of humanity, has already begun. In the monasteries of Tibet, monks sit in silent halls, chanting prayers older than empires, their voices rising like the wind that sweeps across the mountains. Yet behind their calm expressions lies an unspoken question that has haunted generations: have the signs already begun? The prophecy of Shambhala speaks clearly of omens that will herald the final war, and when one studies the ancient verses side by side with the state of the modern world, a chilling alignment emerges. The texts describe a world consumed by greed, where leaders will rule not for the people but for themselves, and where the lust for wealth and power will drive nations into madness. Look around today: corporations swallowing governments, wars fought not for survival but for resources, billionaires racing to escape Earth into the stars while millions starve below. Could this not be the age of shadows the prophecy warned about? Then there are the natural signs. Ancient scrolls mention the trembling of the earth, the burning of skies, and waters rising to swallow the land. To the ancient mind, such language may have been symbolic, but what of today, where earthquakes devastate entire cities, wildfires rage across continents, and seas rise inch by inch, threatening to erase coastal nations? For the monks, these are not coincidences, they are echoes of the Kalachakra prophecy, unfolding in real time. More chilling are the references to weapons of destruction. The texts speak of iron birds that rain fire upon the earth, and roaring chariots that spit thunder. In the era when these scriptures were first composed, such descriptions made little sense. Yet today, we know them too well: fighter jets, missiles, nuclear bombs. The devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the mushroom clouds that scarred history, all seem eerily prefigured in verses written 1,000 years earlier. For some scholars, this is proof that the prophecy foresaw a future where human technology would surpass wisdom, turning progress into apocalypse. But perhaps the most disturbing sign is not external, it is within humanity itself. The texts speak of a time when morality collapses, when families fracture, when children grow without guidance, and when truth is twisted beyond recognition. In this age, people will be distracted by illusions, chasing shadows instead of substance. Think of the digital age we live in, where entire populations are entranced by glowing screens, where lies spread faster than truth, where identity itself dissolves into the blur of algorithms. Are we not living in the age of illusions described by the prophecy? The monks who guard the Kalachakra say little, but when pressed, they acknowledge that the world seems to be walking toward the threshold. They remind their students that every cycle of destruction is also a cycle of renewal, and that the final battle, however terrifying, is not the end but a transformation. Still, the idea that humanity may be nearing the brink is enough to send shivers down even the most rational spine. It is not only in Tibet where these concerns are raised. Around the world, whispers of Shambhala resurface at moments of crisis. During World War II, Nazi expeditions sought the prophecy, convinced that if they found Shambhala, they could harness its hidden army. In more recent times, secret societies and occult circles have quietly debated whether the signs prove the prophecy is unfolding. Even within the corridors of modern intelligence agencies, reports exist of unusual interest in Tibetan legends, as though governments themselves are searching for answers in myths. And then there are the accounts of those who claim to have witnessed signs of Shambhala's hidden army. Travelers in the Himalayas tell stories of glowing figures seen on ridges at night, vanishing as quickly as they appear. Climbers speak of voices carried on the wind, chanting in languages they do not know. Some even describe strange visions in moments of near death, radiant cities glimpsed behind veils of snow, golden warriors standing guard at gates of light. Were these hallucinations born of exhaustion, or fleeting glimpses of a hidden truth? Perhaps the most intriguing connection comes from the Kalachakra initiation itself, a secretive ritual still performed by Tibetan lamas. In this initiation, students are guided through elaborate mandalas that represent the universe, culminating in the revelation of Shambhala as both a mystical realm and a prophecy. The Dalai Lama himself has said that Shambhala may be real, but that it cannot be reached through ordinary means. It reveals itself only to those destined to see it. And when it does, the final war will follow. The idea of a hidden army waiting beneath the Himalayas has fascinated not only mystics but scientists. Could there really be a civilization sealed away in caverns or valleys beyond human reach? The hollow earth theory, though ridiculed by mainstream science, has persisted for centuries. Explorers like Admiral Richard Byrd claimed to have flown over vast openings near the poles leading to unknown lands, accounts that later fed into the Shambhala legend. If such entrances exist, could they connect to the hidden city of Shambhala, where the warriors of prophecy prepare? Whether metaphorical or literal, the idea of Shambhala's army raises profound questions. Who are these warriors? Are they human beings, born and trained in secrecy, waiting for the appointed hour? Or are they something more, beings not bound by time, guardians who exist in a dimension parallel to ours, stepping into the world only when destiny calls? Ancient Tibetan art often depicts them not as ordinary soldiers but as radiant beings, clothed in light, their weapons extensions of their very souls. They are less an army and more a force of consciousness itself. If this is true, then the signs we see today are not simply warnings but preparations. Every collapse of morality, every act of destruction, every storm and fire, these are not random disasters but the clearing of the stage for the final confrontation. And somewhere, in a hidden valley or a dimension beyond sight, the Kalki King waits. He does not march yet, but his time approaches, signaled by the chaos of the world. And here lies the heart of the mystery. What if the prophecy is not about an external savior at all, but about humanity itself? What if the Kalki King is not one man, but the awakened consciousness of the human race? What if Shambhala's hidden army is not an army of warriors in armor, but the collective spirit of those who choose light over darkness, wisdom over ignorance, truth over illusion? In this view, the final battle is already here, fought not on distant fields but in the choices we make every day. Yet the allure of a hidden kingdom, waiting with swords of light to rescue the world, is too powerful to dismiss. The human heart yearns for salvation, for a guardian to arrive when all seems lost. And so the prophecy endures, whispered in monasteries, debated in secret societies, and woven into the dreams of those who feel the world sliding into shadow. Whether literal or symbolic, one fact remains: the world today reflects the signs described centuries ago. And if the texts are true, the dawn of the final war is no longer a distant future, it is the storm gathering on the horizon. High above the snow-capped ridges of the Himalayas, where the thin air freezes breath into mist and silence is broken only by the roar of avalanches and the chanting of distant monks, there exists a story older than the peaks themselves. To climbers, these mountains are physical giants; to mystics, they are the pillars between heaven and earth. And hidden somewhere in those labyrinthine ranges is the most enduring mystery of them all, Shambhala, a kingdom of light, wisdom, and prophecy. The name is whispered in temples, painted in ancient mandalas, and recorded in scrolls so fragile that monks dare not expose them to sunlight. And yet, despite the secrecy, one truth echoes through every version: Shambhala is the keeper of a prophecy about a final war that will decide the fate of all humanity. Legends say that long before nations rose and fell, long before borders and empires carved scars across the earth, celestial beings descended from the sky and entrusted mankind with a city unlike any other. That city was Shambhala, concealed in an invisible valley, unreachable by ordinary maps. Imagine a city where crystal towers gleam without the need for sunlight, where rivers of pure water hum with an energy unknown to science, and where libraries hold scrolls not written by human hands but etched by light itself. This kingdom, it is said, was placed on earth not to rule humanity but to guard it. And at the heart of this guardianship lies a prophecy so staggering that it has terrified rulers and inspired seekers for thousands of years. The prophecy is detailed in the Kalachakra Tantra, an esoteric Buddhist text whose meaning even scholars struggle to decipher. It speaks of a time when the world will spiral into chaos, when greed and hatred consume rulers, when nations collapse under corruption, when famine and disease stalk the weak, and when morality itself becomes a forgotten relic. In that age of shadows, the prophecy warns, an army of unimaginable power will rise from Shambhala, led by the Kalki King, a messianic figure who will ride forth into a final battle between the forces of light and darkness. What makes this chilling is the detail. The Kalachakra does not simply speak in vague metaphors, it describes weapons of fire and thunder that reduce entire cities to ash, machines that can move faster than the wind, and forces of destruction that echo eerily with the weapons of our modern age. Thousands of years before the bombings of Hiroshima or the roar of fighter jets, these scriptures warned of a war fought with tools beyond comprehension. For believers, this was no allegory, it was prophecy. Western explorers who first heard about Shambhala during the 19th century assumed it was a Buddhist metaphor for enlightenment, a spiritual kingdom rather than a physical one. Yet, as reports began to surface of monks describing crystal palaces, armies of radiant soldiers, and a hidden valley that opens only to the chosen, curiosity grew. Theosophists like Helena Blavatsky claimed Shambhala was a real city in a hidden dimension, a place where ascended masters guided the fate of the earth. Later, even Nazi occultists sent expeditions into Tibet, convinced that if they could find Shambhala, they could harness its prophecy for their own dark ends. What they sought was not just a city, but the knowledge to win the war they were already waging across Europe. The monks, however, guarded their answers carefully. To those who asked too directly, they smiled and said Shambhala could not be found on any map. To the persistent, they explained that only the pure of heart could see its gates, and only those with destiny woven into their souls could enter. Still, stories persisted, of travelers who vanished into hidden valleys, of explorers who returned with visions of radiant temples and golden warriors, and of sages who claimed that Shambhala was not only real but waiting, always waiting, for the moment of prophecy. And what is that prophecy? It is the vision of a war so cataclysmic that every culture seems to echo it. In Hinduism, it is the coming of Kalki, the final avatar of Vishnu, who will descend on a white horse carrying a blazing sword to destroy evil at the end of the Kali Yuga. In Buddhism, it is the Kalki King of Shambhala, riding at the head of an invincible army to purify the world. In Christianity, it is the second coming and the final battle of Armageddon. In Islam, it is the descent of Isa and the Mahdi to vanquish the forces of Dajjal. Different names, different symbols, but the same story. A final battle between light and darkness, a savior figure, and a rebirth of the world into a golden age. Could all of these ancient traditions be fragments of one universal prophecy, handed down across civilizations by those who remembered Shambhala? Imagine the scene described in those Tibetan texts, the world engulfed in fire and despair, nations collapsing, skies darkened by weapons that blot out the sun. And then, when all seems lost, the gates of Shambhala open. Out rides the Kalki King, his presence radiant like a star, followed by legions of warriors clad in armor that shines brighter than steel, wielding weapons forged not of metal but of energy itself. They march not merely as soldiers but as spiritual guardians, beings trained in the highest form of wisdom, their every strike infused with the force of enlightenment. This is not just an army, it is the manifestation of divine will, and its victory is foretold to restore balance to the world. But here lies the paradox: is the prophecy describing an actual war, with armies and weapons, or is it a metaphor for something deeper, a battle inside the human soul? Some Tibetan masters argue that Shambhala is not a physical kingdom but a state of consciousness, accessible only through meditation and inner transformation. They say the final battle is not fought on the fields of earth but within the heart, a war between ignorance and wisdom, between the ego and the higher self. To them, the Kalki King is not an external savior but the awakened potential within every human being. Yet others insist Shambhala is as real as London or Lhasa, a hidden realm that exists alongside our own, waiting for the day when its army must march. The mystery is deepened by accounts from those who claim to have glimpsed it. Nicholas Roerich, a Russian explorer, wrote of hearing Tibetan lamas describe Shambhala in precise detail, pointing to the north beyond the Himalayas. He even recorded stories of bright lights appearing in the sky, followed by whispers that the king of the world was watching. These visions were so striking that even Western governments quietly took notice, wondering whether the myth hid a truth. And then there is the question that haunts believers today: are we living in the age of the prophecy? Look around. Wars rage across continents, corruption eats at governments, technology gives us power beyond imagination yet threatens our very survival, and natural disasters increase with alarming frequency. For those who know the Kala Chakra, these are not coincidences, they are signs. The world has entered its darkest cycle, the Kali Yuga, and if the prophecy is true, the final battle may not be a distant future, it may be on the horizon. Yet, the prophecy leaves us with both dread and hope. If Shambhala exists, then it has been preparing for millennia, its warriors training in silence, its libraries storing wisdom beyond imagination, its gates waiting for the signal to open. And if the Kalki King is real, then somewhere, in this very moment, he may already walk among us, unseen, unknown, waiting for the time to rise. The monks who guard these secrets never answer directly, but their silence is telling. For in their eyes, one can glimpse both fear and faith, that when the world falls into shadow, Shambhala will rise in light.